Moose Lake Willow River Sports Liaison Committee, February 21st, 5 p.m. For purposes of the minutes, let's go around the table and give your name and position. We have Jenny back here taking minutes for this meeting. I'll start. My name's Dave Proctor. I'm the chair of the Willow River School Board.
Stephen Blondo, chair of the Moose Lake School Board.
Bill Peel, superintendent, Willow River. Vindahar, superintendent, head custodian, Moose Lake.
Lisa Anderson Reed, board member, Moose Lake.
Jerry Peterson, board member, Moose Lake.
Connie Mickert, vice chair, board, Willow River.
Dave Lozak, athletic director, Willow River.
Bruce Bahati, board member, Willow River.
Okay, we have an agenda before us. Any additions or corrections? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Volleyball, 7th and 8th grade practice location. By way of just a little history on this, April 4th of 17, at a joint liaison meeting, Moose Lake requested that all volleyball, including 7th and 8th graders, be moved to Moose Lake, with the advent of opening their new school. In June 1 of 17, the Willow River Liaison Committee agreed to recommend to the Willow River School Board that games remain in Willow River and practices moved to Moose Lake for a 1-year period, and that would be evaluated at that time. On June 29th of that year, the school board approved the recommendation. On January 25th of this year, the Willow River Liaison Committee met and agreed to recommend to the school board that both practice and games be held in Willow River in 2018 and beyond. So back to where we were. Any questions? We haven't taken it to the board yet. We will. Any questions, comments?
So, we did talk to Becky. Did you talk to Becky, Dave? I know Tony did, so he gave me the feedback on that. She really likes it with the practice in one spot. She feels it's very beneficial for her program to have all her kids in one spot.
Okay. Anything further?
If I can just, on where we're coming from, Bob, with due respect to where Becky's coming from, totally understand that. This is probably an opinion. I'm going through all this stuff, it seems like opinion and facts kind of blur, but I'm going to say when an opinion, this is an opinion and kind of where we're coming from. You know, we talked about Willow's participation numbers in the past and those kinds of things, and obviously where they were and what we'd like to do as a rebel co-op with them, and thinking that for, you know, having it in Willow may help, not hurt that situation. We may get more participation in volleyball in particular. That was one of our reasons. The other one is, this is a fact. The second point is by keeping it in Willow River, it allows both schools to share facilities. That was always kind of a thing that was out of balance, or one way or the other. This way we are kind of sharing the volleyball costs and things by having part of the program down here. Another opinion is we feel that the facility in Willow River meets the needs of the program. We don't, as far as facility, and I guess the last thing would be just that obviously before it has been that way for I'm not sure how long it's been here, but it's been here for quite a while. And again, understanding Becky's request when she asked about it, totally respect that. But that's why how we arrived at our decision. And so at this time, we'd like it to go back to the way it was.
And I don't know the answer to this, but Dave, you will. Is there other sports that you split up like that, where you have them at different locations? You know, like does it happen with your football? Do you have 7th and 8th grade with you?
Well, they're all in, everything's in Moose Lake.
Yeah, and then softball, is that all in one spot?
It's all in Willow River, but 7th and 8th grade are near the school, and JV and varsity are out at the fields. So they're different locations.
And baseball, track is all in one. So the thing is that
Basketball is not.
basketball is separate.
Because right now
That would be an example of where 7th and 8th grade don't
I
practice.
guess, yeah, because that's just, the junior high games are here, but the girls all rotate, boys all rotate, correct? As far as junior high, 7-through 12 practice goes.
Same location, separate gyms.
Can I throw in baseball junior high is at the hockey arena?
At the hockey arena.
That's where they practice when they're indoors, is the hockey arena, and the JV and varsity were in the school.
When it's nice out there, where are they?
Separate fields.
By the,
They're at Twilight Field, the field is
Okay.
too small for them.
Okay.
So other than splitting locations within the community, we're still either in Willow or in Moose Lake for 7th, 8th JV varsities practice.
Okay, well, it's gonna make it interesting, because I know she feels passionate about that it's a big advantage for her to have all her kids in one spot. The example that she gave was that, like when she's working with varsity and JV, and they're, just say they're doing a routine or something, where the kids can do it on their own, or she can have the assistant help, she's able to go to the next gym and then, talk to the coaches there and talk to the girls, and then go back, and so it's a very simple thing to get her whole team on one page, so.
So where do we sit? There was a 1-year agreement. Right? Is that how you understood it, Bob?
Yeah, we were gonna evaluate it after 1 year, but, you know, then we would have to make a decision, is that where we want to go with this as a liaison, you know? Yeah.
I know, having been a 9th grade coach for many years, I know I never had a chance to see the 7th and 8th graders, because I was in Moose Lake. I tried to get down here as often as I could, just to see what was coming up, but I didn't get down here much because of the schedule, the conflicting schedule, so.
Is this a discussion of a bigger topic in terms of the number of practices that, in all sports that are in Moose Lake as compared to in Willow, and doing some of that and bringing some of that back?
Might be part of that.
But there being so many girls that go out for volleyball now, they do summer practices now, so if she can see them over the summer, all of us 7th through 12th grade at one time, that must help some, I would think.
I don't know if she can practice with them, but I know they work out, I know
Yeah.
that.
I don't know how much she, really was involved with the day-to-day practice part of it, and I was going from an 8th grade parent perspective,
Right.
so. But yeah, I understand
Yeah.
the convenience and having everybody in one place.
So, do we have a consensus on this or not, from the joint liaisons?
Why don't you ask, because I don't vote on it.
Jerry, what do you think?
Well, my one concern would be transportation. How does that all work out in this scenario?
I really don't know.
the practice bus. I don't know how many years the junior high did practice here. This last year was the only year that hasn't happened. So transportation-wise, the kids are at the practice bus here, like they did for years.
Is there an advantage? We're talking about the team, and I go 7 through. Is it helpful or better for them to split locations practicing or having all at once? Does that even need to be talked about? But I was thinking about that.
I can't answer that.
Too bad the coaches.
As a head coach, and then every head coach is different, I'm so involved with my varsity program that, I don't ever, even though the junior high was in the field right next to my field, I never, in a couple of years that we've been in that situation, I've never gone to the junior high field and been a part of their practice. I'm busy enough with our varsity practice as far as that goes. But again, that's just speaking for me. I can't speak for other coaches, what kind of contact they would maybe have.
Does anybody ask the girls what they would like?
Good question. No idea.
Dave, I guess I'd just like to say, or to Steve, I think big picture, like I said, is being part of volleyball. If it was all up there, we kind of lose our presence, and I'm not saying it's good, bad, or in between, but I think that is kind of a perception or reality, that there's a presence thing, and to be part of the program and with participation, like we said, we just felt that carried some, and again, respecting what Becky, where she was coming from, and also balancing out this facility issue a little bit more, who's paying for what, and is it something that can be, the way I understand it, I don't know, the way I understand it, we have to agree to make a change, permanent change. It's not that can't ever happen, but we just felt that was our reasons, and again, 7th and 8th grade volleyball players have to come to Willow. 9 through 12, they all are going to be in Moose Lake. They balance out, trade off. I mean, is that an issue? Parents driving one for a couple of years and then they don't have to, or one way or the other in one community. We thought that all kind of balanced out program-wise. Now, again, it's a cost to us, you know, to have it, but it's dollars and cents to set a gym up and practice, and you have janitorial cost, you know, same as if you guys had to do it. So I mean, it's not like it's, you know, but we just felt for those reasons. Again, respecting Becky's wishes. I know all coaches and all players would love to have probably a different scenario than is laid out. Unfortunately, somebody has to decide, and the way it's been is, and kind of it was set up that way, kind of in a fair situation.
So Bruce, as far as you said, you feel that you were losing your presence with having them practicing up there versus, you know, no practice for that down here. I guess, do you feel that same way regarding other sports where practice is taking place up there? I mean, is volleyball the first conversation, and then we're going to start talking about basketball, we're going to start talking about all the other sports where practice is all in one place versus the other?
Steve, that's a great question. I really feel the more we can have presence in both sites, it's better for Rebels. Now, is it better for Moose, or better for Willow, or better for a parent there or there? I don't know, but I just think for Rebel sports, if it works, obviously there's some situations where it doesn't, but where it does, I think it creates more of a unity, or whatever you want to call it. I use the word, you know, ownership and those kinds of things from our students' perspective and from Moose Lakes. I know it's been talked about before, and when everything is in one, and I don't know, there aren't too many that are, softball and baseball primarily, and they've talked about participation levels are generally better at the site, and I don't even want to go there, but, you know, survey that to have it. But just in my opinion, when we can share something, the ownership side of it.
Gee, where I come from is, I'm looking out for the kids. We can sit here and argue politics and stuff all night long, but what's best for the kids? And it may be separate, it may be together. You know, I really don't have the answer, but that, you know, my concern is, because you want some cohesiveness and consistency for the kids, the students, I would think. But how you achieve that, that's another question.
You guys are pretty unified on that one, the three
Yes.
members? And then how about my members? Lisa, what do you think? And the bottom line is, there isn't a ton of pressure right now, because with this decision can be put off to the next liaison meeting,
Yes.
because we've got a volleyball thing, you know, volleyball's in the fall, and we have a soon. The sports season's over, so we'll have one coming up, and we have one in the summer, so we're just trying to see if there is consensus here. You know, and this kind of the sticking point is the coach is feeling that the way that it changed is better for the team, but yet, you know, we've got this bigger discussion of facilities,
Yeah.
so.
And I think you guys have my feeling, I think you guys have a good point, regarding that kind of trying to keep that presence in both. I like that idea. I think that, yeah, if practice were down here, maybe, you know, participation numbers would go up. I don't know, that would be interesting to see if there was any measurement of that.
Well, this is the first year it was up
It
there,
was
so
up
all the
there.
rest of the years it was split, so we could actually check it out.
But I also, you know, I also wanna support our coach, and if she's finding that it's better to have everybody together, then I feel like, you know, I wanna talk to her about that maybe, or hear from her about, a little bit more in regards to, would it be the end of the world if we did it split again, or is it really that much better to have it all in one place, I guess, and.
Can we put this off till our next meeting so we can have a chance to talk to coach and see?
I just wrote that
if We
down.
can work that out.
Absolutely. Any problems with that, anyone? Okay. We'll put it off to our next meeting. Next item on the agenda?
Could I just say one thing about a decision like this, since we're at a decision like this? It would be making a change, right? We have to agree on a change. I mean, that's kind of
Right.
the crazy world that we're in, right? And so hopefully, like you say, more information
Yeah.
will be helpful.
Well, you know, we should understand too that last year, I mean, it's been like practice and games here for many, many years prior to 17. And in order to make the change that we did last year, we went through a process. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen, right?
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about now, the process, and there was an agreement for 1 year. And we're back to the beginning of that process, so that's fine. We can put this off to our next meeting. Next item on the agenda, if we could just get a Moose Lake outdoor facility status for 2018. You know, where you at with your facilities? You know, we hear stuff, we read stuff. Let's get it from the horse's mouth.
Sure. Bob, do you wanna fill us in on
Well, I'm
some?
looking at you.
Oh, yeah.
He was looking at you.
So, yeah, we just had a meeting the other day, we were looking at what to do, because in the process of building, when we ran short of money, the field structure, the complex, kind of got disjointed a little bit. Basically, we're looking at a track and a practice football field, and that's basically what we got. We have to do the baseball field on our own. I mean, I'm just talking about the bond money, so we chose to do that, and then we were trying to see what else can we do, because we would like to have some sort of concession stand with some indoor bathroom facilities and fencing around things and more parking lots and early childhood playground. And we were looking at talking with the city a little bit about a complex, some sort of baseball complex, and having it all, or I'm sorry, it's not
Little League
Little
or,
League,
yeah.
and softball and baseball, and so having kind of like a cloverleaf type thing. And so they're just looking at that right now, and prices, seeing different concepts, and so we got one concept the other night where we've got another landscape engineer that's gonna come and talk to us here pretty soon to see, do the numbers match up, do they have different ideas? And then if we were to do a concept, we'd probably need to go out to the public again for some additional money, so.
Now with the track, Bob, is it ready for this spring?
So the track itself can be run on this spring, but the problem we've got is we don't have the rubberized surface on there. In order to put it on there, you have to have, it has to be above 50 degrees, I think it was the number.
July, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until July, there's a window.
Yeah, so the bottom line is that we have to wait until the temperature warms up to put the surface on. And so what we have told our contractor, what we told him is that there's two options. Either you're getting it in before season starts, or we're waiting until season's over. And most, I think the realistic ones until it's over. But we'll have asphalt or bituminous that they can run on, which is better than running on, you know, it never was good because they were running on the roads in Moose Lake. But to have them run down County Road 10 or 73
Yeah.
is even worse,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Our issue really is, we won't have grass growing, so all you'll have is clay out there, and so that'll make it really interesting. But once they get on the track, it'll be better than the roads.
So the intent is to do all practicing for track this year on the new complex, at the new complex?
Yeah, I don't know that we have any other choice. I mean, we could go into town again and run on the streets, but I don't know that makes sense.
And baseball will be at the,
Baseball is gonna be at the old school, and, we're gonna try, yeah, it's gonna be at the old school.
okay.
We'll still own the building, we just hopefully sold it here the other day, so, but they're not gonna take it over until June, so.
Now, the center of the track, was that earmarked for football practice field?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Let's see here, Steven, why don't you take that?
Yeah, I was gonna stop him when he said football and then just like leave it at, yes, it was earmarked for football, but, I think, you know, I would say that we had that space and it makes sense to put grass in there so that if there is a track meet, when most track meets, kids are hanging out in the grass watching what's going on, stretching, everything from there, and it's the size of a football field, so it's, you know, we've set it up so that we're getting, we did the mix, where they actually sifted the dirt that went into it, so we can get rid of the rock, put the sand mixture in, so it's a good mix for, being able to put in, grass, sod.
Is that your intent this spring?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna, all the grass out there is gonna take a while, so, it's gonna
I
probably.
mean, to get it seeded, that's what I
Yeah,
meant this spring.
yeah.
That's your intent? So, obviously, we'll be talking football practice later in this discussion
Right.
today. That sounds like it's a possibility, a partial possibility. It's gonna be a practice football.
Not for this year,
No,
not for next year, I mean, because I won't have grass growing.
It wouldn't be established.
oh, it wouldn't be established.
So if we practiced on it, it would be then reseeding it the following year. and the following year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Football practice.
this is not a 2018 issue. Your practice field on the track, that's not a 2018 issue.
No, we can't, no, I don't even know, right. I don't know how long it takes to establish the grass, you know, but it.
I can't grow grass, so you're talking around it.
Yeah.
The company who's putting it in is literally taking care of it until it's grown, and then we get to take it.
Okay, any other questions on that topic? Thank you.
I think the exciting thing about that, and Bob kind of mentioned, was, you know, that idea of putting in concession stands, putting in the bathrooms, we can have some, you know, track meets there. We can have, I mean, it would be great to be able to pull that into our community and our communities and kind of go from there.
Bleachers, number 6. You need them?
Well, we'd probably give you a heck of a deal if you wanted them, so.
Oh, heck.
You know, here's the deal, the more that we look at this, the more unexcited we are about taking them from you. Are you guys still interested in having them or not?
I guess we haven't talked about that. We'll
I'll tell you what, I think we would take them, we'd find a use, but for me to hire some company to move them, I'd probably do it at the same time you got your new bleachers. And see if I can get the company that moves your bleachers and then take those bleachers and put them up at the old,
and we could work out a financial arrangement to haul them up there. It could be substantial, you know, I mean,
I think, Bob, whoever would be, if we had new installed, they wouldn't become set up, so I don't think anybody'd be equipped to take them as they are. They'd have to break them down, and so, I don't know if that would work out, and I don't wanna dispute what your idea is. I guess as far as could we use them, it would have to come from you first.
Okay.
What are you selling them for, if you wanna say it that way? And I know that decision doesn't have to come tonight unless we
Okay.
have it, you know.
So would you like me to give you a proposal? I'll talk to my board and just, it's, all right, I don't wanna say much more.
The only thing I'd like to add is, Bill, are we, I mean,
Huh?
this, if we were gonna do something this summer, that would kind of influence our needs too, one way or the other. And that's what's been holding us, you know, kind of, you haven't needed them, you know, which I totally understand how it's come out, but
Now, this one's a little time sensitive, so if you could do that, give us a proposal, we'll respond to it, and wait. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Anything else on item 6?
6.
Okay, item 7, the big part of why we're here tonight is the cooperative agreement review. Just a little overview, so we can get into things, is that a number of meetings have occurred at both Moose Lake and Willow River and jointly to arrive at the document. Does everybody have a copy of that for tonight? All right. You know, just some highlights with this. What was been done here is the agreement was old, it wasn't up to date, it didn't provide some of the direction that we currently do business. For example, we've added junior high athletics to the cooperative title. I mean, it's a part of our cooperative, you know. We've defined roles, responsibilities between the liaison committee and the cooperative, which is defined as a joint meeting of both boards. We've consolidated all the fiscal matters into section 3. We've brought items up to date. We've clarified areas. We've added some. We've modified. We've removed the wording pertaining to elementary grade programs completely. We've removed language, and there wasn't much anyway pertaining to hockey. We've formalized, got a formalized meeting format proposal in here. Then we provided a grid defining where each sport practice and games will be held. And the possibility, and we'll be talking about this one a little bit later, of a new definition for administrative host, and a number of other changes. So, with the exception in your document of the 5 areas that are in boxes, let's forget about those for a second. We'll come to each of those. You'll see on the agenda open topics. Those 5 areas are defined below, and we'll deal with each one individually. All the red language changes in here are new language, cross-throughs, are deletions. The original language of the document is all contained within here and either maintained or deleted. You've all had an opportunity to review it. Do we have a consensus on all this document with the exception of these 5 open areas?
So, there's some things we just know, some little things that we
Okay.
would like, and I know you're the keeper of this, so let's just, if we can kind of fly through this.
Sure.
Under liaison committee definition, we thought it should say a joint committee, so add the word joint. It's a
Okay.
joint committee assigned by each school board that will meet to make recommendations for the cooperative.
Joint committee.
Okay.
We are noticing an inconsistency of capitalization, just a minor thing, but some people look at that. Dealing with, just the different definitions. You have cooperative committee, liaison committee, administrative host. Sometimes they're capitalized in the document, sometimes they're lowercase.
Oh, okay. What would we prefer?
Capital.
So anytime cooperative is used,
I was, yeah.
liaison is used, administrative host is capitalized.
Yeah.
School board.
Yeah. So for example, like on,
School board? You want school board?
well, that's coming up.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Okay.
So, like on 2.2, it says, almost the second to the last sentence, the red part says cooperative committee. Well, that's lowercase.
Okay, I see.
But then up above, like the 3rd sentence down, liaison committee is capitalized, but cooperative committee is not.
We'll capitalize the whole works, right?
makes sense.
Yeah.
The whole thing's in caps?
These are all,
No.
these are all minor things, by the way.
Yeah, we'll get to the major ones.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Now, but back to that school, do you want school board too? Like in 2.2, it says the Moose Lake School Board. That's
Yeah,
fine?
Yeah, we thought anytime you said school board, superintendent, high school, or elementary, or most of the time, actually it's just high school principal, probably should be capitalized.
Everything capitalized. Now, give me that
Emphasize-
list.
Emphasize the importance.
And athletic director too.
So, school board?
I don't know about athletic.
Superintendent, you said school board superintendent, what else?
School board superintendent, high school principal, and you might as well do AD as long as,
AD?
since Dave's here.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I
You
Alright,
just went up a notch, Dave.
yeah,
I talked to Bill about a raise.
go to,
Bill's not in charge of that.
go to 2.3, let's see, the third to the last line, it says, upon only when there is unanimous approval by, we thought it should say, the liaison committee members.
The liaison,
Alright,
This one here.
okay.
who was that?
That's on 2.3, it's the second sentence to the end, Bruce.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, okay,
See the upon.
okay.
3.4, I talked to Bill about this earlier, we couldn't figure out where is your.
Delete. Please delete. I don't know where I come to, and you know, and you missed one too, by the
It
way.
was probably important.
Take a look at 3.2. It says see section 3.9. There isn't
There is
any.
no money.
There isn't any.
No.
So you can delete that too.
Alright, there we go. Alright, cruising along. Did we, now on 7.2, we have speech and one act in there?
Wait a
Is that
minute.
something that we,
7.2.
7.2?
No, those will come out, right?
Yeah, that's what we think.
Yeah. Oh, I see over here on administrative
right-hand
host.
side.
Yeah, you took them out of 7.1.
Okay, they need to come out there too. Okay. All right.
Yeah, there we go. Those are just the little things that we do.
Willow, guys, can we just do this here? Bruce, any problems with those changes?
I'm sure at some point there's gonna be other changes along the way like this, and we can always do them, right? But I totally.
Connie, you good?
Yeah.
And I'm good. So, based on that, do we have a consensus on this agreement on everything other than the 5 things listed under open topics?
Steve, what are the 5?
They are, number 1 is, you got the agenda?
Yeah, the number, I mean, on here though, number 1 is.
Well,
on
number
page
1 is on page 1 where it says, you know,
Got
okay,
it.
the alternative for administrative host. The next was on page 3, which is meeting format, 2.33. The next one is 3.4 on page 4.
Yep.
That's a 2-topic issue really, because that's a definition, and then we need to talk about track equipment.
Oh, is that 2 topics there?
That's 2
Oh,
topics.
okay, all right. Yeah, this is-
And number 4 is the cooperative events, that's where Willow requests to move track as an administrative host to Moose Lake, etc.
Is that on page
that-
7 there?
That's 7.2.
Okay, that box unresolved?
The unresolved, that's right.
Okay,
And Article 9.1, page 8 is location of football practice.
That's the one I was missing.
So those are the unresolved open topics, and I'm just on the table for the time right now. Can we reach a consensus that this document is good with the changes as Mr. Inderhard just pointed out to us about capitalization, et cetera, et cetera? Because, you know, we do represent schools, and it should be-
well, are we going back then, even if we said fine, we'd go back and talk about 3.3 and 3.4? Is that the
Yeah, we'll be doing that under
Okay, okay,
number 3.
yeah, all right.
So I think moving this to, I guess, final draft,
Mhm.
can we call it that? And then we can all look at it one more time, make sure that
Absolutely.
things were,
Yeah.
and then I think outside of those topics, I think we're, Lisa, Jerry, we're.
So as a final draft, we have consensus, and we'll get that out, make those adjustments and changes, and ship them out to the superintendents, who can then disperse them from there, okay? All right, great.
Thanks for your hard work on this.
Oh, I love doing this. I love doing this.
A lot of red ink.
Okay, open topics, page 1. At the last page of the document was a proposal to change the definition of administrative host. Administrative host, as described in the current document, simply and solely has to do with paying the bills. Anybody disagree with that? It has no other function, no other purpose. And in our discussions over the past year or two that I've been, I hear the term, well, you're the administrative host, so therefore, you know, you're responsible for, we're not responsible for anything for administrative hosts, according to this agreement. And I think maybe we should be. It clarifies some things. So we just threw this on the table for discussion. And I'll read it, definition of administrative host. An administrative host of a cooperative sport, the school's responsibility shall be providing a game-ready facility for the sport, if applicable, for example, golf, cross-country, okay? B, maintains maintenance for said facilities. C, provides all equipment necessary to provide for games. D, hires and terminates coaches for the sport. E, payment of shared costs for the host sport. F, fields all complaints for the sport. And G, establish annual game schedules. What this does is it says whoever the administrative host is for golf, that they're totally responsible to the cooperative for ensuring that these things are done and managed. And it kind of defines those roles and responsibilities clearly. Did you guys have a discuss? We had a discussion about it, and the Willow River Liaison Committe agreed with it with some degree of modification. And I think probably the better term is clarification, because there are a couple things that came up, and I've got a substitute one to provide if we get to that point. But let's deal with what everybody had before them. Yeah, Jerry?
I have a clarification question. When it comes to, like, C, provides all equipment necessary to provide for the games, well, some sports equipment is more expensive than the other sports equipment, so how do you get some equality?
You know, I think the reality is, and I think we'll be getting to that when we get to item 3, we need a clear definition of what is equipment. What is a facility? What is supplies? I think we need to do that because it's sort of muddying the waters as to what it is.
I just see and it's important that it be equal, but I just got a gut feeling that we're gonna get into a contest over $1 here and $1 there, and sometimes it's substantial money in the equipment difference. Instead of keeping in focus, we want the games to be played and go on, you know what I mean?
Understand?
But we split the cost of equipment.
Mhm.
So even though we're providing the equipment, we purchase it, but then, like if we were doing it and we provided, just say for example, track. We buy the equipment for track, we're charging Willow half of it.
But there was a difference, Bob,
I'm just-
and we'll get to that. That's number 3. And if we can, 3 does impact the definition of this administrative
Okay.
host. It
But then
does.
as long as we know what equipment really
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
Then
So we can probably wrap the
that
2
would be
together.
that they pay for half the equipment, we just have to figure out what equipment means.
Can we, now did you guys discuss this at your,
Oh, yeah.
conceptually, how did it go?
We liked it. I mean, I like the fact that we're starting to define things and the definitions are good. I don't think there were any major issues. I did, as we started reading through, just a point of clarification. Under A, providing a game-ready facility. This is for games, not for practice.
You see? I'm glad you
Did I
brought
just-
that
okay,
up.
good.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm gonna just keep that for myself here. And then Bruce, if you could take those, and Steve, if you take those. This was some of the modification issues we were looking at after we went through it, okay? And you're 100% right, Steve. under A, you'll see, providing game-ready facility and/or practice facilities as defined in section 9, practice and game sites. That's the grid where it defines for the sport if applicable, and then there's an exception to it below. And that exception is cooperative sports share locations for certain sports in terms of practice and games, i.e. 7th and 8th grade volleyball games in Willow River, junior varsity and varsity games in Moose Lake. When this occurs, each school's site is responsible for functions as defined in 3.3. In other words, wherever that practice and game is, as it is today, we provide the custodial staff, we provide the maintenance, and this, that, and the other, okay? Because with a change to administrative host as written above, we could be responsible for your custodial staff and maintenance in your gym. We're not gonna do that, and you don't wanna do that here, okay? So it's sort of keeping it the way it is, but we had to put that exception in there. And then we thought we'd also define for boys and girls basketball. The 2-year rotation would continue with the exception above applying. In other words, when girls basketball is in Willow River, we're responsible as, for that 3.3 section, okay? And you would be for boys when they're in Moose Lake, and then we do the flip-flop. Now we're responsible for, you know what I'm saying? Maybe the language needs to be brushed up a little bit, take it, massage it, do what you need to do with it, and we can always come back to it. But did that answer your question, Steve?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Steve, can I ask Bill and Bob, just just a comment, when, on administrative host, basketballs switch, we're assuming that administrative host will remain the same regardless of location, and this kind of takes care of that. So whatever they are in the future, you know, however we decide administrative host for basketball, for example, it wouldn't necessarily have to change with the site. Okay, that kind of, does that make sense to you guys too, rather than, or Dave, or, I mean, you know what bill paying is, and some seasons would overlap, uniforms 1 year, and then one administrative, you know, so we wouldn't be flip-flopping administrative host. Is that correct, Dave? Is that kind of the way we talk? And I'm not saying where administrative host should be today, but it's just wherever it is, it will not flip-flop as we do with the basketball.
Can we agree that we have a consensus on the concept of this? Yes, Dave.
Hires and terminates coaches for the sports.
Yep.
So if Willow River is the administrative host of softball, Willow River would make the decision on hiring or firing the softball coach with no input from Moose Lake, or?
I think that,
Right now, we all have input.
yeah, and that may be an area that we need to modify, if that's what we so want to do. I guess we haven't discussed that.
I thought we had talked about it, that it would be maybe at the Willow River School Board is where it would be officially recorded, but it would be decided.
Yeah, and that's how it's done now.
Yeah, and I think for that then, my view is if that's the way we're gonna have it, we should define that, don't you think? Okay.
One board would officially take action, but how we've done that, like with hiring head coaches, we have administrators from both schools, athletic directors from both schools, in that process, and terminating, and then, so if it'd be softball, Willow River would approve that with the support of Moose Lake administration.
Is that in here now?
In
I don't think so.
In the old one, yeah,
I don't think so.
I don't
Just the
think
way
any
it was
language
done.
in that.
Okay.
So you might wanna add, and then with termination, same thing, you would have to officially go through the administrative host, but both athletic directors, we run evaluations together and make our recommendation together, we hire or terminate.
Would that be the section where we'd wanna add that? You know, where we talk about hiring of coach, or evaluation of coaches? Would that be the section something like this could go into?
I remember thinking that this was gonna muddy things, and I don't remember where that was. I remember a discussion about if we're hiring the coach, and I don't remember if it was the evaluation or termination of a coach, that it could get really confusing if if we have to constantly get input from both sides and get the value in getting input because we're in the cooperative, and I remember it just being a very kind of,
Sounds like there's
She
an
wanted-
issue of trust.
Dave, is it working the way you
Well,
guys are doing
yeah, it
it
works
right
just
now?
fine. We
So
haven't had any
you
problems.
guys can get
I just don't
together.
want it to be, I don't want it to go from, we are all working together,
right,
to just by what this says, if, you know, you may have a problem with the football coach, Moose Lake may have a problem with the football coach, Willow River doesn't, well, how do we resolve that?
Yeah, exactly,
You know,
exactly.
But here's the deal, neither of us would want the situation where, if they're under, if I have an employee under my contract, I should have the ability to fire that person, whatever, you know? If it came to that, because they're under our contract, same with you guys. You wouldn't want us saying, well, no, you can't do that, and we're saying, or you're saying, well, here's the deal, or maybe, and so you don't wanna limit yourself that way, but I think we want to have a discussion. We don't wanna be surprised by, what? We had this, whatever, and this coach, and, we thought we were doing good, and, you just fired him? What? We don't know anything. So you want.
That's what you're saying, right?
yeah, I mean, the process we have in place right now is perfect, it works, it works very well.
And I agree with
And
you
I
100%.
wouldn't change it a bit. I just wanna make sure that that's kind of the process we're still gonna be going by.
Can I suggest this? Dave, could you write that up? I mean, and, it's, you know, and very
Yeah, I mean,
succinctly as you can.
I can, as far as the process we have now.
The process that we have now, and if you just send that to me, then I can,
Yeah.
I'll try and get it
Yeah.
fit in here if we're as a draft to be discussed. And I don't even have a clue where it would fit in this document, to be honest with you.
Well, we talked about it in 6.5.
6.5?
We talked about hiring. That refers to which employees, work for that.
Oh, you know, 6.6, all head coaches shall be appointed, da-da-da-da-da.
But sometimes we hire coaches that aren't, employed by either school.
6.8, coaching renewal contracts are annual appointments based on recommendation of the administration liaison committee, and then we could put something, 6.9 or something? Does that make sense?
That works.
I think so.
Yeah.
You might wanna clarify how.
Yeah, Dave, if you could just sort of, step 1, step 2, step 3, is there any disagreement with anybody in the room of what Bob just said? I mean, the school that has the contract, that is an employee of that district. And the other district should not be dictating to that district how to handle their contracts. I mean, there's no question about that, right? Okay. But there's the upfront process to get to that point. And then if we get some language in here, we should be able to satisfy that issue, correct?
so we're not surprised.
Yeah,
Right.
we've had that discussion in the past with different board members, but the consensus of, stepping back to, a while back with basketball coach, where it kind of was one-sided, where we really want, we want the support of both schools, both school boards, and work towards that.
Absolutely, but if we can't get it, then it's obviously the host school who would hold the contract. And you know, maybe we need to put in here too, if this thing were to be signed, let's say next month or so, and there are coaches that are, and the administrative host thing is defined, and they are not employed by the actual school district who's the host, they should all be grandfathered in the next go-around, it would change. Does that make sense?
I was gonna ask that same
Don't
question.
you think that's the way to do
yeah,
that?
Do we have coaches that don't fall, like, so we put this in place, I don't wanna back us, we're painting ourselves into a corner if we've got coaches that are hired by Moose Lake, but Willow is the administrative host or vice versa, and same with, let's make sure that these definitions are fitting with what we have, or
Right.
grandfather in.
Well, and a good example is right now with track. It's
Mhm.
my understanding that Tony is the head of track, okay? And he's a Moose Lake
Right.
employee, and we're the host. according to the current deal.
And
And to
letter
me,
A-
that should be, you know, we should take care of that.
And we have the facility, which is letter A.
That's right.
So,
There you go.
exactly,
There.
exactly.
Okay. So that grandfather, so would you, anybody be opposed to seeing just a statement and it could come out? Well, no, it could stay in beyond 2 years. The grandfather clause of those people current, be like a 6.10? Okay. So, at this point, it seems to me like where we're at with administrative hosts, we're all on board for the concept.
Dave, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Getting back, Bob, this question is for you or for Dave. The termination end of it then, just as for clarification or what your thoughts are you guys? There is a board that maybe has to take action at some point. And that board would always, and is that what we're talking about? That administrative host board would be the board.
Mhm.
That, in other words, some kind of, whatever legal ramifications are involved. If it got to the board level, it would only be one board, administrative host board.
Yeah.
And what we
They would
talked,
be responsible.
yeah, and what we talked about, is at that meeting where that decision was being made, the other board would be present, showing support. That was, again, different school board members, but that was our discussion after, back a few years ago, was from this point on, what we would do, is, because it has to officially go through one school board, but then, the other school board members, from the other school would be present at that meeting and showing support.
If they so chose,
Well,
correct? Let's
those
say they
words
had no
weren't,
opinion.
those words weren't used as
No,
far
I
as,
know that, but-
I don't think we can mandate
But-
that. I don't think we
no,
can
but I mean,
mandate.
that was just,
I
that
mean,
was,
yeah.
that was the understanding, again, nothing written in
No.
words, so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
nothing written in words, but,
I think
that
if
was
you-
the
and I think
understanding.
that, you know, there could be a situation where we just don't agree.
Right.
And one of us says, all right, it's under our contract, we're terminating this person, and then it's done, and the other school doesn't agree, well, fine, you're not showing up. But it's hard to fire someone, it's always emotional. And it's, if there's a situation, if, you know, if we're in this cooperative and we're gonna show support, you know, and some of those tough decisions, just because you got the coach that didn't work out, and you're taking all the heat, I think the other school should be showing support, whether it's one person or a couple of them, you know, or, you know. I think that I remember that discussion now that you talked about it.
That's why I mentioned it, it's that situation of
Yeah.
firing, for lack of a better term, that really gets, like you say, somebody has to take the heat. And is that fair? Probably, you know.
In looking at the definition with the revised with the black lettering on, does anybody have a problem with what was been added to A?
Oh, yeah, that's.
Why did you put as defined by section 9, practice game sites?
Well, that's the grid.
I know it is, but why did you put it in there? Does it matter? I mean, you're provided.
Well, that's where we define where games and practices are going to be.
But if you're the administrative host, so you just say, oh, okay.
It-
To me, it just seemed like the individual words there, just, I mean, I don't know that I have a fundamental problem other than that, I just think that if you're the host, you're providing the facility, a game-ready facility for the game as well as practices, right?
Unless the practices and or game is not in here,
So,
right?
so what, like, boys basket, no, where would we have an example of that?
Football,
Okay, so
volleyball,
football,
football, volleyball, track.
So so Moose Lake's the administrative host of, what, football practice? Are you administrative host of practice and then of games as well?
No, see, the administrative host, as we have had it in 2017
Yeah,
and early, for all those years. Willow Rivers would be the administrative host under that definition.
okay,
Now, The exception, and this would apply, because it would show on the, like it does, shows the football for games are in Willow River and all the practices were in Moose Lake. If you go to the exception below, okay,
No, we have a problem though.
this.
The game-ready facility and/or practice facility. So you can take basketball, and volleyball out because you've got those listed as your exceptions. But you do have other things, I mean, football is the one that sticks out, where we're splitting between game and practice.
Mhm.
So, and you're the administrative host of football, correct?
Right,
So, and as it stands right now with practice being in Moose Lake,
you would be to look at the exception. Under the exception, you would be responsible.
or share locations for certain, okay.
You would be responsible, as you have
Okay,
been all these
got it,
years,
Got it, got
for
it.
your custodial, maintenance, etc.
Functions, okay.
Then we would be responsible for the field here,
Okay.
okay? So that's why that statement had to be put in there.
Got it, okay.
Because otherwise, you're right, if Willow River remains as the administrative host of football, and practices were to continue at Moose Lake, we'd be responsible for all of the groundskeeping and all of that type of stuff. And we're not gonna do that, and you're not gonna do that here.
We're okay if you wanna do that.
That's what, I understand, I
We're
appreciate
open to
it.
that.
I appreciate it, but that's a big no.
Right, okay. No, I understand.
Even
I
without
was,
going to committee, I can tell you that's a big no.
I was reading the exception as being more specific, but I see now,
It's just an example.
right, okay.
So does that make sense to everyone?
On, C, can we take out to provide? Cause that's confusing me when I read it.
Where are you at there, Lisa?
C under administrative host, provides all equipment necessary for games. Every time I read that, to provide, the second time it throws me off.
Oh.
Provides
For games.
You just use
games.
Necessary for games. Yep,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay.
Is it?
Take out to provide, huh?
Yeah. I think
So C,
Yeah.
you would like to change it to provide?
Nope, just
No,
provides
take
all
out
equipment necessary
Provide.
for games.
Well, get rid of the S.
Nope, get
No,
rid of
we
the,
need the to provide.
nothing necessary. Get rid of to
Oh, there.
Good.
Okay. What am I taking out of this?
Oh, just the word to provide. So it just says provides all equipment necessary for games.
Okay.
Does that need to say games and or practice?
You know, that was a question as I was reading it. Put some thought into that. It says games, should it be saying practice as well? Similar to what we did in A?
Like saying that and or practice?
Clarify, yeah. Not a
And-
shared cost, if it's equipment, it's a shared cost.
And,
Right.
or, and or games? Oh, pardon me, practice.
Practice.
Okay. Okay. So conceptually, you know, we've got to deal with item C, but we'll get to that under our definition under 3 here when we talk about equipment. Can we consider this as a part now of the agreement on page 1 here where it says administrative host definition? We can put this definition into there, and we may need to modify it somewhat after the next listing. Everybody okay with that?
Drop it into that final draft.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll get it in there, and we'll play with it and see how it turns out. If we can go to page 3, 2.33. I requested this Because when we meet as a joint school board, a cooperative meeting it's called. These are two school boards getting together for a formal meeting, and it's not formal at all. Okay? And being in, with open meeting law and all the rules that go about it, I thought we should formalize that meeting. And I think it was well received. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, did your committee, you're okay with it? There's probably some modifications, I suspect, and that's fine. So can we consider that, did you have any changes, Bob, to that? The voting thing was okay, I think we had talked about that, does that make sense?
Yeah, we actually talked about that quite a bit, because and then we went around to, no, okay, so you just need you need your majority
Quorum.
of,
4 votes, I mean, you might have 6 members, you might have 4,
right,
but you need 4 votes.
But you need 4 votes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, okay. So, do we have a consensus on this? Steve,
I think so.
Lisa?
Yes.
Jerry?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good.
That was easy.
Okay, here we go. 3.4 on page 4. Now, there's 2 topics here, and we should deal with them individually, I think. One is the definition that you see on 3.4 for equipment, and the second issue that's on there is Moose Lake's request for Willow River to pay 1/2 of the track equipment, and we have those numbers, okay? Let's deal with the definition first. Now, that definition,
you have the, which, the thing, I just wanna see if you have this thing.
I think it's, this is the one,
I've got a better one than that, but, okay,
does that mean,
I got a better,
does that mean higher or lower?
lower,
Lower,
yeah. Irrelevant, but I just wanna
Okay.
make sure,
about $30,000?
maybe 12,000.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay,
12,000 is 12,000.
so on 3.4, and keep in mind, the second sentence where it says C 3.9.1, that's
Oh.
deleted.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know where I got that from. In the red, there's a separate paragraph that says, for purposes of definition, facility costs are those costs associated with what is needed to play a game or a meet. And the equipment / supplies are those costs associated with what is brought to a facility to play. In other words, you go away to an away game, that's equipment. If you have, what do you need to put on a game-ready event? That's facility cost.
Well,
What
we
about
also
practice costs?
I was gonna say, we could change that from game to game and or facility, and or practice. So cost of, equipment that's needed for practice would also be equipment.
Just, we could give example after example where we've shared these things before, and all of a sudden we're not sharing them, you know, we gave the classic, football thing just the other year. Well, you're gonna take that blocking dummy to another thing, you don't do that, you know that. We had, we did a practice, pole vault thing, remember we shared that, that was a pretty expensive thing. Now I got a pole vault thing here, and all of a sudden that's not equipment. So I don't know, I think we're really struggling with that one, because we feel like you're trying to tighten up the definition of what equipment is. Equipment is what, I understand the facility. The facility is whatever's attached to that building. You know, I'm not gonna charge you for a basketball, or my volleyball thing coming down from the ceiling. I'm not anything that's attached to the building, I understand that. But if we need stuff for a sport, and it's not part of the facility, that's gotta be the equipment, okay? I was gonna argue with you about the volleyball standards that we bought, but okay, whatever, that, we'll deal with that. But, you know, when I can just tell you that you guys in this last thing, you narrowed the definition of equipment, because we've got a big bill coming up here. And that's what's really kind of frustrating us a little bit is, equipment is whatever is not attached to the building. And we can't just pick and choose. And if it's needed for the sport, if I need hurdles for track, what am I gonna use hurdles for? It's for track, it's the equipment for track. Do I take them to another site? No, but that can't be the definition of equipment. So we are having a problem with that definition. Okay?
And that's why, Bob, I think it's important, we need to separate
Right.
the track equipment issue versus this definition. They could maybe combine together, but they're probably separate issues. This is for long term. But the track equipment stuff that you have before us for, with the bill, et cetera,
Yeah.
that's a separate topic.
No.
It's not this, you know, I mean,
It's definition of the equipment, because it will be important, because I will say that if we go through the list, there may be some stuff that I would agree, okay, well, that doesn't fall under the definition. But we have to come up with that definition, and your definition is much narrower than what we were thinking the definition of equipment is. And we will always come back to those examples of what we did in the past of, well, why is this not included? Well, it's because you don't take it to the game. Well, no, that's not true. A lot of things we don't take to the game that are equipment. So it can't be that narrow. And so, I mean, we just have to have this vigorous discussion right now.
but I remember, and I've only been involved with this on one item,
Yeah.
and that was the 9-man walking sled, $5,000. And I understand that took a couple of years to get that through, and it was voted upon at a liaison. And they split the cost, we each paid $25 and went home. That was a process you went through. Came to liaison, talked about it, got an agreement. This arrived.
You've had it.
No process, no involvement.
All right.
And I don't know about you, but my dad told me, he said, I won't pay for anything I don't agree with. And I can't agree if I don't know.
But you asked for it, I gave it to you, and we have a liaison committee coming up. The problem is, we do have track season coming up, by the way. And so this is a timely thing that we need to deal with. And so, I don't know,
We're gonna, and here, in the short discussion we had on it, and I'll be real honest with you, we didn't anticipate, based on everything we were told, that your track was gonna be ready this year. Our board has not addressed this issue. Our board has not.
oh,
We will. Okay, we will have to. You know, but we were led to believe it wasn't gonna be ready, so what's the rush?
in order to get out of this, all you have to do is postpone it one more liaison, and then it can't happen, okay? So you know the track season's coming up, and so I would have hoped that you would have talked about this, because it's not a little deal, it's a big deal.
It's a
I mean,
big deal.
It's not 5,000, it's 50,000 or whatever it is, so yeah. All right, how do you wanna resolve the definition of equipment? Because even as we look at this, you know,
Did you have one?
I think that anything that's required for the sport that's not attached to your building is probably equipment. And I would like to just have a discussion on that, because maybe there's some examples that, I'm just trying to think of, can it be that simple?
What, like football field lights or something like that?
To me, that's part of the field, it's part of facilities.
We can't play a game without those lights unless you let us play at 4.
I'm just saying that that's a facility versus equipment, that's what we're trying to define.
Right.
And so that's not equipment, that would be, you're not removing that thing as part of your facility.
It seems almost like, you know, when they were talking FF&E with the new school, and they said that, you know, the facility, the school is the building, the structure. If you turned it upside down and shook it, anything that falls out is equipment.
Is equipment.
Is
FF&E.
use, right.
I have a question, how did you deal with equipment requests in the past? Like, if you needed something, you just automatically got,
Well,
but
I
it
mean,
sounded
we've never had a
like-
big thing like
Yeah, it sounded
this,
like you.
you know, but I mean, I'd been trying to get a blocking sled for years and years and years, so I mean, it wasn't just all of a sudden, here's this bill, who's like paying for half of it. I had been requesting and talking about it for years.
So maybe you can put a dollar amount, if something's above some dollar amount, I don't, then we need to talk about.
Cause we do it all the time, you know, we buy pucks, we buy basketballs, we buy tape, you know, and then we build each other and boom, you're good to go.
So maybe if it is something that big, then it needs to be talked about over a specific dollar amount.
Well, I mean, it's always just, as a head coach, that's just my common sense, that's the way I've always thought about it. When we bought, the dummies that we've used were really old, so again, it's something that I presented to the board a couple of years in a row, and finally then again presented as a recommendation, can I get 5 a year for the next 5 years? Because again, that was a bigger cost. It wasn't you know, just my regular budget. This was above budget, so it was something that I would present to the liaison on a regular basis until finally, you know, I got the approval from both boards. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Or the same thing with the I wasn't at the last one, but with the totes to try and store equipment instead of just, you know, giving the bill to Willow and you're gonna pay for half of it. You know, anything that's above and beyond my normal equipment budget, I've always presented to the board asking, you know, we've gone up, we've increased the number of helmets that we purchase, added 5 junior high helmets. Again, that's not something that Willow River just added in. It's something that I presented to liaison, so.
I've got a question, just clarification, is that sled down here, or is it up in this sled?
It's at the old school.
I would say that it would be nice if we had in your proposal for definition. See, you know, just so something to react to. You know, I understand FF&E and I understand tipping buildings upside down, everything falls down as FF&E. I understand, and that's inside a building. We're not dealing just with inside a building. You know, and particularly here we got track, and you can't tip your track upside down, you know, that type of thing. We've given a proposal to move this along. How about you guys come up with a proposal? And we'll work through it.
Okay.
And because this one, by the way, 3.4 impacts the potential of approval of the administrative host issue, correct? I mean, it says, provides all equipment necessary for games and/or practice. So we definitely have to arrive at some type of decision there, okay? So to move off that one, the next one we have.
Just to help, you know, and I mean, I like your idea of anything above and beyond what our normal yearly expenses,
Well, and I was
that we
thinking-
do talk about it instead of just, you know, telling the other school board, you know, here's the bill, you have to pay half of it. You know, those big ticket items, we should all talk about it ahead of time.
I was thinking, just listening to you, that maybe the decision needs to be made in a more timely manner than a couple of years with the sled.
Sure.
Well, track season's coming,
I just
so.
wanna,
But sometimes they
That's a
don't
lot.
get their wish the first year they ask, you know.
Almost, yeah,
that's
almost
just
never
the
do.
outcome. Yeah,
It's a process of,
You've always been good about, you know, you're pretty frugal and whatnot, and
so were you denied every year, or just, oh, let's think about it?
well, I wasn't told no, it just wasn't,
Just wasn't
Money
asked.
but, you know, in your recommendations as a coach, you know, we could, you know, talk about how we would have, we'd have a volunteer come out and re-weld our sled for the 10th time, the 11th time, you know, whatever, because we may do, but, you know, eventually it's like, yeah, that sled's 30 years old, it's time, you know, so,
Okay.
And the point
but there was consent, you know, everybody was on
to
board.
keep in mind is both schools have benefited from that sled. That both schools need to benefit from the track. And if we can share the cost of the sled, why can't we share, and both use it, why can't we share the cost of the, what do they call it, hurdles? since we both benefit from it. That's confusing to me.
When I said like the high jump, I mean, that's something that I think of the high jump, kind of similar to the sled. You're not gonna move that around, but that's a bigger item, but I think that's something we can kind of pay for. So I mean, I think like separately, right, but I'm just saying, things like that, I think what we're gonna be talking about.
Well, you're either in the cooperative or you're not, so let's work in the spirit of being a cooperative instead of where we can find opposition. I mean, that
Well,
bothers
absolutely.
me.
Absolutely, so what are you gonna do?
Well, what are we gonna do?
Are you talking about the track stuff specifically?
I'm just talking about the definition, and you're gonna come up with one, and then we'll compare those. Now we need to switch gears and talk about the track equipment, because it's a time-sensitive issue. I assume you're gonna order it, you need it, you're gonna just go order it anyway, right?
And you're gonna use it.
No, but
I don't think we're
Here's-
disputing that, because we both understand the benefit of having the track equipment will help all of our students, all of our athletes.
Well,
We're
that's
not
what I'm
disputing
getting
that.
at. Yeah, right.
I think
Right, so I don't know where that came from.
I don't mind going through this, maybe we should have Steve and me and you and Bill.
We can sit down.
And if we come up with a definition of what equipment is, and, see, we may not be able to agree on it though, and that's the thing that makes me nervous, but I think we can look through this and say, well, obviously that's equipment or whatever, and then we can nail it down to maybe there's
How about just take,
five things that don't, that we're gonna dispute, at least we got it down to five.
just go to the sporting companies and ask what equipment is, they'll be more than happy to give you a definition.
Anything that they've got in their catalog is equipment.
There you go.
And I'll give them your name and number so they don't.
That's fine. 4611, I don't think that.
Okay, why don't we do that? Anybody opposed to that?
Because it sounds like you guys are willing to, I mean, it sounds like you're willing to split cost on some of this. It's just the, kind of the way this all worked out, where the timing is
Right, I mean,
not how it happened
we
in the
have tight
past.
budgets already, and then to get this
Right,
big bill
It
and
was
say,
more of a
well, you need to.
presentation.
right.
Or
So we
lack of.
apologize for that. It's,
That's
yeah.
probably-
All of a sudden the track is getting done and we're going, oh crap, we need some stuff on this, to be able to play on it, so.
I'm sure you knew that you needed it, and I know it was brought up. Can I just add, in part of the discussion is, okay, you have the facility, you're gonna purchase the equipment. Now, you probably want Cadillac stuff, and we want Volkswagen stuff. So that's why, again, I'm talking about going forward, it needs to be discussed. And we all, I guess, are aware of that, but that is, who is the decider as to what's gonna happen?
Yeah, okay.
Point in case, we could be at softball fields, we could decide to do some crazy thing, and we're gonna do it. Well, you guys.
Here comes the
We're
bill.
gonna buy 10,000 softballs.
That's not a good way to do business.
We're gonna buy 10,000 softballs, I'm getting
That's
crazy.
right.
And because we have a softball machine that's gonna just shoot them out in the woods and we're not gonna go get them, but you're gonna, I mean, it's part of the whole process.
Right.
And I know we all are in a place where we don't wanna be on this decision, but we are here. And my thing is, whatever we do here, what are we gonna do, like Lisa, what are we gonna do the next time, or the next time? How are we gonna address those things? We try to define, and for the purpose of, what, and again, is, like Jerry said, you go to a sporting goods store and you'll probably call equipment this, and this. It maybe doesn't fit our world, I don't know, maybe it does, but,
I think nothing is beyond right, or there's some consensus and agreement on this, if we sit down and look at it very seriously, but there is a process. And to me, the whole thing has always been, there's no process. I mean, like I said, I've only sat in on one, and it was the blocking sled, and that took 2 years, and all of a sudden, $5,000. It's a split cost, let's do it. It was really, but we went through a process of liaison meetings and looking at et cetera. Anyway, enough on that.
I wanna say, Dave, on football sled, we shared sites, and that was where I was kind of in on that. I can remember Tom Paul made the motion, and I seconded it at a liaison meeting to go forward. And and my thinking at that time is, hey, we both share football sites. You know, and obviously, we all would have agreed, and that was just in my head too. There it is. Now, this is, and I'm not trying to, this is yours, not, whatever, okay.
Track actually isn't ours. Track is not ours. So
You guys are still the
Well,
administrative host on
it's-
track.
I'm sorry then, the track is physically on your site.
So if you don't want to pay, that's okay, that, we'll just let you have it, and then you can get the equipment. Sorry.
I know, Bob,
we'll
you didn't
visit
didn't
you.
wanna, you didn't wanna go there. We'll laugh at that.
So we'll do this, the four of us will get together and tackle this one because it has an impact not only on the current track stuff and the definition, but also the administrative host issue. So we'll do that. Okay, anything else on number 3? Number 4. Number 4 is, if you go to page 7, we're right back at it. Here we go. Willow River would like to see boys and girls track under administrative host 7.2 moved to Moose Lake. And we've had a variety of discussions already tonight, reason for topics on why, okay? And in order to balance things out, trying to maintain a level of evenness in the whole co-op, Willow River would take over one of the current Moose Lake host responsibilities. For example, maybe it's girls basketball, boys basketball, something of that nature, just flip-flop. Any thoughts on that? Did you discuss that?
We did, but our thing was football
What,
practice.
oh, that's a separate item.
I know, I'm just saying, when we talked about flip-flopping, that was the one that we chose.
So would that change the location of the sport on
Well,
practicing
this,
sites?
the reason, Lisa, that we think that it should move over to Moose Lake, if that's a primary factor, the fact that your track and field is going to be in your area, you're responsible, would be responsible for the maintenance of it, and all of that type of thing. And under the new definition of administrative host, I think you would want that. That's just my thoughts. Did that answer your
What was
question?
yours again? I'm sorry.
If you took over another one of our sports, would it change this here?
Well, it would change, not really, if, let's say for example, and I don't know that we really talked about what sport, on what our own group, let's say we took girls basketball and you took, boys and girls track. The way we rotate, and under the definition of the administrative host where, you know, we're responsible if the girls are playing in Willow River as far as custodial maintenance and all that, and then you would be responsible when they play up there in 2 years, and we flip-flop, it really doesn't make a difference. So it wouldn't have an impact. Am I right there, Bob? Right.
Yeah, the basketball isn't.
Yeah. So that's the thought, and we think it's critical that Moose Lake take on track and field for that purpose.
And then what were you gonna take on again? I just wanna
I
focus
would,
on that.
you know, I just threw out basketball.
We haven't discussed it.
We really haven't discussed,
But
But you've already got basketball. You got girls' basketball. And then
well, no, you're the host,
not as host.
not as administrative host. Under administrative host 7.2, you're the host of boys and girls basketball.
And that's
Yeah,
why I
on
was
page
asking-
7.
That's why I was asking if it would change that other graph.
Can you run through those, because mine printed weird, so Moose Lake has.
It's volleyball,
Okay.
boys cross country, girls cross country.
Boys basketball.
Boys and girls basketball,
Baseball and cheerleading.
baseball and cheerleading.
Boys and girls basketball, baseball, cheerleading, and then you guys have track.
We have football, golf, boys and girls, track,
Track.
boys and girls, and softball. So any thoughts on that? You wanna discuss it further before the next meeting?
We haven't discussed it.
We haven't discussed which sport it would be. Maybe you do that, think of it, if you're,
That's what-
are you for,
yeah.
are you thinking that the concept makes sense, Steve?
I think we, you know, if I recall, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we kind of, we were more interested just in what sport you guys would you know, we kinda discussed it, said, interested in hearing from you guys, what sport would you take in return for that? And then be able to discuss.
Yeah, and we never really,
Well, maybe,
we never really did.
We
Well,
did
what-
talk about basketball a little bit, because right now they're both under Moose Lake, but we both host basketball.
Yeah,
So basically it would shift the administrative host responsibilities, more of the bill paying and all
Yeah.
that under Willow River School.
I think that would be a fairly simple thing to do.
Can I
Yep.
throw something out there? We couldn't take volleyball.
no.
I mean,
But you're talking administrative host, that doesn't mean where it's played.
I'm talking administrative host. It's a shared, right now, it's a shared sport. And again, I'm speaking for myself, you guys. I mean, we have not discussed that.
So,
Yeah, we gotta look at the administrative host thing, because it provides maintenance of 7 facilities.
It wouldn't change, I don't think.
no, it wouldn't change, not under the new definition of administrative host, it would not, how we're doing business would not change.
We need to think about that first, I think. And you guys said you hadn't discussed yet, or fully discussed.
No, we haven't, you know, not as a, like, I remember that too, Connie, we did talk about basketball a little bit,
Just as
but
an
to say
example.
this is what we are firm on and recommending, no, we didn't do that.
So all girls' basketball is played down here, but we're the administrative hosts on girls' basketball,
Yep, for 2 years.
or for 2 years.
And then 2 years you,
No,
Yes.
you were always the administrative host. That never changes.
yes,
But
Okay.
the sites change between.
but the
boys
site
and
changes
girls.
with the boys.
Oh, that's what's getting me back.
And that's that
That's the
exception,
main
so.
one.
Right.
So to use basketball as for an example, so if boys and girls shifted over under Willow River, we would still play flip-flopping every 2 years. It was just
Mhm.
the administrative host, not the facilities,
Got it.
as an example.
So how would you wanna deal with this one? You wanna talk further?
Yeah, maybe we talk
Yeah,
further.
I'm still
and
confused
if you
about the
guys,
ins and outs, I gotta have a little time.
if you guys have a chance to talk and sort of give us an idea of what sports might make sense for, or that you're interested
Our,
in.
our
Well, I-
only options, excuse me,
Yeah,
Dave,
go
our
ahead.
only options really are volleyball and basketball, am I correct?
Yeah,
And baseball, which wouldn't make sense.
right,
So it's volleyball and basketball.
yeah. So why don't you go with that, and I suspect that's what we'd be doing. Anything else on that one?
Dave, does anybody understand or think as to how the things are balanced out in the between the two schools? They think it's unfair, or there's, one school has,
Yeah, I think
carrying more,
I think that was a big part of our discussion, that's part of, I mean, something we definitely have to talk about, because you can just physically look at, I mean, if you just look at the chart, and just visually look at where are practices, where are games, versus, you know, Moose Lake versus Willow, you can visually see that there's a difference there.
okay. I think that is a perception,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I've got something here I'm gonna show everybody.
All right.
And if
All
you
right.
would please.
Is it a visual?
You can visual.
All right, all
It's a
right.
visual. Dave, you ahead now?
Go ahead,
All right.
I've heard this. He does a good job.
He hasn't actually heard it. I just put it up here. And I don't know, Rory, I don't know if you were able to see it or not, but I'm gonna go through everything. I don't know if everything pertains to exactly what we're talking about here, but I just kind of broke it down in my own mind, fall, winter, and spring. Okay? And I've got in the fall, and just so you know, golf, cross-country, cheerleading is not on here. Is that okay with everybody? Neither one of us host golf. Cross-country, it's not really a facility issue right now, is it? I mean, so, and then obviously cheerleading isn't really a facility issue. So these are the ones that are on those sheets that are facility. In the fall, we have volleyball and football. What I did is I took an indoor sport and I kind of weighted the two. Indoor sport counted as 1 point and an outdoor sport counted as 2 points. If you indoor and outdoor, does that make sense? So volleyball, right now, I put a 1 and a 1 here because it's at both sites. Now, you guys can dispute this, we can sit here and argue as how I did it, and I appreciate that, but just for clarity or simplicity, let's keep moving. Football, outdoor sport, 2 and 2, we each have responsibility for football. Winter, girls basketball. Moose Lake here has 1 this year. We have the junior high girls games here. So we have, I just put a half here in Willow River because we have something happening in girls basketball that isn't, and then boys basketball, I put 1. And I know it's not that way this year, but this is the way I put it. In other words, Willow River, everybody understand though where I'm coming from here? All the junior high games are in Willow River, so I gave a half a point to Willow River every year for the winter sports. Spring, baseball is in outdoor now, 2 points, outdoor site. Softball, we have 2 fields, so in fairness, I thought I weighted it 1.5 points per field, okay? Is that just kind of weighting who's responsible and what they have to care for? This is very simplistic, okay? Now you add them up and here's what we have. Willow River, 7.5, Moose Lake, 6. Okay, now again, you can argue with how this was defined. Now, track is not entered in here, okay? You guys put track in, let's say now in the new world, this has been the way it was. Now you add 2 points here, you're at 8 and we're at 7.5. As far as where facilities are, weighting them very simplistically, indoor, outdoor, giving more weight to the outdoor facilities. So we're not too far out of balance, okay? We're not too, now again, you look on the sheet, and you see the cheerleading, and you see the cross-country practices, you see the golf stuff, you look on there, and it does look, you know, I can understand that. But this is in reality, fall, it balances, winter balances, spring, baseball, softball, now there is track. So that will be, you'll carry more of a load in the future on track.
And I appreciate this, this is good to look at it this way. One thing I wanted to add though is that we do want to have home meets for cross-country, so we're actually developing a trail out on the property.
And there could be an expense to that, potentially, and things like that.
In general, cross-country is
yeah.
There's kids in the building, that is true, but,
Yep.
I would agree with.
I totally agree with you, Bob. And the same thing, we could deal with, well, we could play games with junior high, how they kind of go, you know, a little bit one way or the other. But in general, it's very simplistic in general. This is what it is.
And Bruce, that represents both games and practice.
This is where the facility, yes, it represents, if it's an indoor activity, again, just
For
to simplify.
practice or for the game?
Yes, Willow River, we have 7th and 8th grade, we have 7th and 8th grade volleyball. Now you have junior high and varsity volleyball. Now, do you have more activity going there with your varsity and junior high? Probably, okay? Maybe, I mean, we have 7th and 8th grade games, but there's practice all the time. So I mean, does that kind of make sense? Yes, practice and games.
But for this year, volleyball practice was up at Moose Lake.
Yes,
And so
correct.
it would
I'm
be-
going by where we were before we
Right,
started this whole
Okay.
world, okay? And that's, I think, at the end of the day, Bob, this is all open for discussion. You guys are building, you built a new facility, you built, so that's why we're doing what we're doing. Changes have come, right? So, but this is where we were. Now, if I could just go back, beginning of Rebel Co-op, and again, these figures, Bob, you're gonna argue, I know you are, and I totally, I totally understand that. I'm shooting from the hip here. Since 1984, Moose Lake, baseball, this is facility improvements, not maintenance. Baseball field, did you throw 20,000 in your baseball field over the years? Seeding, grass, I know you did that, you did some dugout work and all that, I threw 20,000 out there. They replaced the gym floor, I don't know if you were around, Bob, when they did that. I threw 100,000 out, I don't know what it cost, but that was a facility improvement. Now you got the track, I threw 750 out there, I don't know what it is, I think I heard that figure. You got a new baseball field, that's 200,000. That's what you did up, or you're committed to up to this year, okay? So since facility improvements, you've done $1 million. Now again, we can play with these figures. In Willow River, softball field, for those who don't know, in the early 90s, that was snow fences and gravel and everything, And we did, for anybody that goes out there now, there's fencing and at least to a point where it was a $75,000 expense at that time. And the reason it was fairly reasonable, a lot of volunteer work went into that, okay? In the early 2000s, we put in a gym. It was about a $2.5 million project because the shop was there, but locker rooms and gym, I put 1.6 on there, okay? That's what I put on it. Football field, that was 2010, I believe, 250,000 we put the bleachers in and changed the, you know, the facility and added that. So improvements since, and you can see where I'm going, yes, this favors our argument. We've carried our load. I mean,
I just wanna ask one question, why did you not put our gym in?
Oh, that's
in
just
there?
what I was gonna
Huh?
ask.
Why didn't you
Well,
put our
our
gym
gym.
we just did?
okay,
Our new locker rooms and,
Yeah, locker rooms, gym. I mean, I don't know, I mean, I think it was okay up until you put your gym in there, because we just did a new gym.
okay, here's where I'm going. What you did is you had a gym,
Yep.
okay, and you replaced it. Now, I understand it was an expense,
Yep.
okay? And we were using it, Rebels were using it, okay? We did not have a gym.
But
We-
you have one right here. You have-
Yeah, but the Rebel program was not using it.
All right.
They never used it, okay? So these are additions to, and I understand what you're saying. Yes, you paid money for your, and let's throw $1 million or $2 million, whatever you wanna do about it, seriously.
Okay, just keep going.
But the gym was, you had a gym, we did not have, prior to us building this, I don't know who was around, anybody? Nothing was in Willow River other than junior high.
There was no,
And-
one varsity game a year would come.
And that even faded off to the end. And the reason was, Moose didn't wanna come down here, and we couldn't blame him. So we never forced the issue. So we built this was built, and this turned into a Rebel gym. It enhanced the Rebel program. Boys and girls that were practicing until 9 o'clock at night and early in the morning, now everybody's home by 6 o'clock, between our two, you know. So I mean, it helped the Rebel program, okay? Obviously, yes, we use it for Phi-Ed, we use it for everything else. So again, we can argue how we got here. All I'm saying is, let's say this is equal, okay? Fairly equal. Now, that's in facility improvements. Next one would be outdoor field maintenance. Again, we can argue these figures. For Moose Lake, baseball, they have one field they have to maintain every year. Willow River, 2 softball fields. What I did is I made that, the maintenance on those 2, I made them a wash. I'm not gonna argue how much money you take and do with your baseball field. I'm not gonna argue what we do with our, I just made it a wash. Football, Moose Lake has football in practice and a locker room we're using for practice. And I put $5,000 a year. Now that's where I really do need help. What do you have? I mean, the kids shower there, you got utilities, you got whatever, I was thinking maybe you had $1,000 a month in utilities and stuff for the locker room, janitorial expenses, you know, for whatever, I don't know, again, we could, seriously, that figure I just shot from the hip, but I kinda, okay, that's what you put into maintenance for football, practice and locker room. Willow River, 15,000, and that is a low figure, according to Phil Johnson, with all of our costs. But over the total history of the Rebel sports, it's kind of an average. It might have been 8,000-10,000 back when we started to maintain and keep it up. Now it's pushing 20,000. So I use 15,000 per year, okay? So maintenance costs right now, and again, these figures, you can argue with them, 34 years, Moose Lake, for outdoor fields, 170,000, Willow River, there.
I have a question, how come it costs you so much? How do you get 15,000 a year? Is
Can
that football games?
Yep.
Yeah, can I talk? Because having, playing game field, practice field in Moose Lake, that's what it costs to maintain a first-rate field. You get, your baseball field, you have to put the money in your baseball field, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a whole lot nicer, the grass, everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Willow River's done a wonderful job of it. And I've done it before when our custodians were doing a very good job a while back. And over the summertime, it's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job as far as watering with the sand that's out here and everything else. The practice field in Moose Lake, many years, we used Rebel football fundraising money to buy grass seed.
Do you use city water to water your field?
Well,
No.
Sandpoint also.
Oh, Sandpoint.
Yeah, so we're moving garden sprinklers. We've had all sorts of volunteer work as far as Rory Buckwitz running the water line out to that practice field. Moose Lake hasn't incurred very many costs with football practice field over the years. We've either gotten volunteers or we've paid for it through our fundraising. Weed and fertilizer spray, finding people to mow the practice field, a lot of years. Like I said, Rory Buckwitz, digging a water line from the bus garage, that was all volunteer.
And just the aeration too. I mean, when I looked at, I mean, we've put thousands in actually volunteer for aerating that field ever since, you know, when it was rock hard. And that, I mean, that cost should be figured in there because that's gonna be needed to be maintenance if there is gonna be another practice field, or it'll be the same thing. It'll be rock hard like a concrete slab, and we started aerating it when players were hurting their ankles, which was back Brendan's before that. So I mean, many years. And we've done that for other schools. I mean, we used to do it actually for Hermantown until they saw how effective that was and they bought their own equipment. But so I know what the cost of, you know, with that aeration per season, and there's many thousands of dollars there that the school didn't pay for, but somebody did.
Yeah, so I mean, the big point was like moving forward with your athletic outdoor facilities, a lot more, to have first-rate fields, baseball, softball, inside of a track, whatever, practice fields, game fields, whatever, a lot more needs to go into those fields than what you've been putting into the fields.
Well, our new practice field then for football, that has in-ground watering system.
Which is
For starters,
what you
right?
would want. I mean, that's
Well, right, I
that's
mean,
so
but
much, because even at the practice field,
and the new well.
when Rory did run that water line again through the summer, you know, every 3-4 hours through the night, even 3 o'clock in the morning, I would drive out to the practice field and move those sprinklers so that we'd have a good field, you know,
And that line got tagged in from the bus garage.
But I have a question overall. This is fine, and I appreciate the work you did on that. And aside from showing the comparisons, what message do you want us to understand or know about?
It's not to show anybody whatever. It's to kind of hopefully clarify a little
We
bit.
know it costs a lot of money.
Rory can appreciate what it takes to keep a grass field up to speed. I mean, Rory could tell you, like he talked about the aerating, and you talk about volunteering. There's been lots of volunteer on, well, Rory knows, on both practice fields and even the Willow field, like Dave said. The point being is, and I didn't want to go there, but you guys going forward and realizing a new baseball complex and whatever you have for softball, FIAD, whatever, your grounds, a track, I would assume you'd want to try and keep your track presentable, like you said, Steve, you'd be using it in, you're gonna, and I know you know this, Bob, you're gonna take a hit on your budget, and Rory could, I mean, I know he's even, you've explained that, it's not gonna be as, the expenses aren't gonna be as they were, they're gonna really go up, your groundskeeping is gonna really go, so.
And Bruce, sorry to interrupt, but I think part of what Bruce did here, I think there's the perception out there that Willow River maybe doesn't contribute so much. And I think that's kind of what you're showing here, Bruce, is that, you know, it really is a good mix of contribution from
There's a balance.
schools, which there should be, but I think that perception on maybe some of the school board members, maybe the community, I don't know, that, you know, that Willow doesn't hold up their share, and I think Bruce has done a really good job of showing that both schools really do a good job of providing a lot for our athletes, for our students, for our kids.
And I think the other point was that where it started was the balance issue between the the sports, you know, you're right, Bob, when you look at the graph in the agreement, the chart that's in. And I still did that before I came over, just to get a sense of what it was. There seems to be, by looking at it, somewhat of an imbalance, but when you look at it from this perspective, it's, and you know, is that our goal? As a cooperative, two schools, in sharing athletics? And if it's our goal, you know, are we there? And any changes we make, should we continue to strive to keep it that way? Like if Moose Lake were to agree to take out as administrative host boys and girls track, and Willow River would take on, let's say, I'll just use this as an example, girls basketball. Those type of things.
If I can just say, it's all about a fair, and we wanna be, we talk about cooperative and good partners and all this kind of stuff, and that all sounds great, but in reality, it's never gonna be equal. It's never gonna be 100%, but it's not really too bad. Somebody did this way ahead of all of us. They set this stuff up. And Dave, and there might have been some few adjustments over the years, and Dave might have been in on that, and maybe you too, Bob, but they set it up this way for a reason, and there is some balance to it. I mean, more than maybe we perceive, you know. You know, we say, gee, we're getting taken on our end, or if you guys have that, you know, and I think there is some balance and fairness. It's never gonna be perfect. But we would like, our position would be to be a good partner.
Good partner.
And, you know, I mean, not lesser, not more, not whatever, and we're never gonna, you know, I'm not, here we are with our 45, 55 on our expenses and all that, they're taking advantage of us, or this or that. Well, let's work on that stuff if we have to, as we go forward.
I think, Bruce, I appreciate this, and I think, you know, I'm thinking that the numbers, you've got fairly good numbers there from Willow, because that's where you're at, and your numbers for, you know, you guessed on your Moose Lake numbers, but I think it does show, you know, if we were to increase, which I think we would increase on our end, we could probably do the same with finding, there is an equity there. I think that's what you're saying, it's not gonna be equal, but it is equitable.
I didn't put this, so going forward, you're not paying enough, or we're paying too much. That's not anywhere where, I'm just talking historically. And, you know, and Dave and Rory probably can appreciate it.
I think it's just a question of how to make sure that we both feel that it's equitable. And it's like you said, it's not gonna be equal, but how do we make this equitable? And I think our claim still is practice is 5 days a week or better, and games are 1 day a week. And when you look at, you know, again, going back to the table in here, we've got a lot more days that we're hosting with practices, and you guys have a lot more of the games. And the games are the exciting part, but
Let's go back to number 4 though, because we were talking about bringing junior high volleyball practice back to Willow River, and we're getting kickback from you saying that we want to keep it in Moose Lake.
Right.
So you're kind of talking both sides. You're like, well, we want to kind of split it out. So,
Well,
no, that's a good
points on both sides, but you know, you're talking, you know, you're saying, well, we want to kind of distribute it more, but yet, no, we don't want to give up junior high practice because the coach doesn't, you know. So we're trying to help, but you know, you're not letting us sometimes. So
right.
In an effort to get Jerry home before it gets too late.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
Jerry, we're on the same.
I just think whatever
Dave,
decision should not be.
That's
Can I
fine,
answer Steve
keep
here?
going.
Steve, 4 practices a week, 1 game, football, okay? And now, we gotta remember, we have junior high, we have JV, and we have varsity football games, so it's not just 4 nights.
Right.
That we have to prep a game. To have that thing game ready, that starts in April,
Exactly.
okay? And that's where that figure comes from. Whether you play 1 game on that football field to the where it's at, you've got to start in April. You can't start in August and expect grass. Ask Rory. Okay, he would tell you.
Been there, done that.
We've got, aside from chemical people out there, Rory's been out there. He's put a tremendous amount of work out there, and to his credit, that's why that field is the way it is, with his advice and help. And we've had other contractors come in and do that. That's a process that starts in April. So when they have a game on September 1st, it looks like it is.
Right.
Okay, football practice, I'm not saying anything against the football practice, but as far as what you have to do to get a football practice field ready, you really don't have to do what is done out there. You don't. But getting back to this 4 practices in Moose Lake and 1 event in Willow in football, in one typical week, if it's a home game. You realize what you're asking of our kids is to come to Moose Lake 4 times. And yes, we get bussed up there, but our people have to go up and pick up and bring the kids home, other than the seniors that drive. Now, you understand when you're doing that, you're asking your people, now you're gonna go to Willow for everything.
Right.
Now, maybe that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but again, it takes this ownership or sharing, or whatever you wanna call it, of the sport, and turns it a little bit one-sided. That's kind of my philosophy where I'm coming, and call me crazy, call me nuts. I would think I don't think dollars are driving this. I mean, you're having the practice up there. It's the idea of, I mean, obviously, the facility is, that's not the maintenance dollars, yeah. And we understand you've got a track, you've got a space inside the track, not telling you what to do with it. But man,
I guess we're on
like
number
Jerry
5.
said, why
don't you ask?
Bruce, did we go to number 5?
I think we
on the
just did.
agenda?
Okay, did I?
That's okay.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. We're
Okay,
there.
I'm done.
Why don't you
But I
ask?
think as Bill said, yeah, we're telling you no, we're not sure we wanna give up a sport or practice up there, but then we're saying, oh, look how, and it seems like it's inequitable, I think that's maybe not how we feel, but it's the perception, and as
Yeah.
you said, there's this perception that there's not an equity, and I think that, it probably is more equitable than
I have a
I wanna
question.
say.
Jerry,
Why don't you ask the kids what they want?
there you go again.
No, serious,
Yeah,
I'm serious,
I
because
agree.
any decision we make shouldn't take away from our kids. Just because us adults think we know everything and have everything right. And I'm really passionate about that. You don't wanna sacrifice the kids. You really don't.
Well, maybe we
However,
could have that done.
Pardon?
Maybe we could have that done, hold
Yeah,
But then each year might change because you're pulling different kids.
Yeah, that's-
It's back and forth.
Let's move on to number 5.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of getting into it. Just to make the playing field clear, I had spoke to Dave about this. What are the requirements for football practice for 7th through 12th graders? He says he needs 2 fields, and he needs locker room space for up to 100 kids. Okay? I can tell you, from Willow River standpoint, we don't have 2 practice fields for football, nor do we have locker room space for 100. My understanding at your new school is you don't have 2 practice fields, correct?
no,
Nor do you have locker room space for up to 100 kids, do you?
no.
Okay, so we're all on the same page now, and here's what I'd like to do to address one issue. I think we need to talk about 2018 tonight, and beyond 2018 at a later date, okay?
Yeah.
Because we're less than 6 months away from football practice. And as Bruce was just saying, with preparation of fields, et cetera, even though practice fields maybe you don't start in April, it starts in this early summer, okay? So the bottom line is that's the topic. Do you all agree that's what we should be doing here tonight? Is getting that started, the options? And my sense is we may have to do something different than what we've done in the past to be able to accommodate for this year. And I don't know what those options are, to be real honest with you. I've thought a lot about it. I've got some questions. Some of them have been answered tonight by Bob in terms of facilities there. And so, where do we want to go from here? I mean, we're both saying we have no facilities for football practice in 2018. That's what we're saying.
Can I just say as the head coach, I've spent 19 years, dedicated so much time to this program and these kids and these communities. And I don't know, to be in this position where, no other sport is worrying about where they're gonna practice, and we've gone through that the last 2-3 years of, where we're gonna be this year, I don't know, where we're gonna be next year, I don't know. And, we've done such a good job of bringing positive attention to these, sorry, I didn't plan on getting weak. Obviously, it's been a big part of my life. The positive attention to these schools, these communities, these kids. It had nothing to do with the wins and the losses. It's all, the Danny Williams and the Bull Moffats. And to be in this position where we have nowhere to be, and it's like we're an afterthought, or and we'll, wherever we are next, we'll make it work. That's the one thing we've always done on a dirt field, having to bus to practice, having at the last minute to find where we're gonna practice. We'll make it work. We always do. And, but I don't know, I don't want to offend anybody, or I feel like having all these years of practice in Moose Lake, we still continue traditions from before I ever became head coach, and part of a great program is having those traditions and talking about those traditions for 19 years of things that we've done, and having a presence in both communities, I think is really important. And again, even with the changes, some of those traditions, they're kind of dying because we don't have a set place to practice. We don't have, things change, and things are going to change over years. I understand that, but I don't know. I feel like part of what I feel, I don't know. Just that I think we've done a really good job representing everybody, and to be in this position where there is nowhere to practice, nowhere to dress our kids. It hurts me with the time that I've put in, and I've spent a lot of time kind of feeling, and not from anyone personally sitting in here, but just kind of as an outsider, being a Willow River teacher, that I've felt like I've had to butt heads for 19 years, even though we've done such a good job of representing everybody here. And just positive, we get sportsmanship comments from the State High School League, from officials, from administrators from other schools. You guys, when you go to administrator meetings and school board things, I'm sure you get pats on the back and you hear about our program. And I think we've gone above and beyond as far as a high school program for trying to do the right thing and representing everybody here with our kids and trying to teach them the right way to do things. And the winning, that's just the icing on the cake. But, I don't know, I don't like that we're obviously in this position where this all could have been resolved and should have been thought ahead, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And to be in this position, it's a hard thing to take, because we've put a lot of time into building a program that everybody should be proud of. Sorry, I didn't.
That's okay. That's okay, Dave. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think we should talk about options. Last year, we talked about, I was trying to mow some level areas, and it appeared level, but I don't think it was.
They weren't. I walked out
Yeah.
there. And they did appear level, because when I first, thought, that'd be perfect behind Elko or Shopko.
Yeah.
And then I walked out there with Paul, and it dropped straight down, and it didn't work out.
And so our issue right now is there's no way we have grass on anything that's level. And, unless I went back to that spot with the skid steer but then I still need to get grass growing again. And so, but although, I guess I have the whole summer. That's our issue as we,
Bob?
yes.
Okay?
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
wanna cut you off.
Yep.
And Dave, I don't know where you're coming from, but the old school, or the school,
Yeah,
that you're gonna be,
yeah,
something's gonna happen, hopefully, hopefully something happens.
yep.
That locker room where it is, is that still a potential option?
Well, the trouble is if we sell it,
I understand, but
Okay.
I understand.
yeah, so you're
But I'm
saying we
just
don't
saying-
sell it?
No,
I
I'm
don't want
saying,
negative vibes.
could you work with whoever? Are
Oh.
they, you know what I mean, for this particular, I mean, we're talking, June, we're talking a couple months down, you know, I mean, I don't know what the needs are, it's none of my business.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, and Dave, I don't even know if that's the best option, but there is a locker room there that they've used. And I understand, and there's a space there next to it, correct? I mean, there's a field there, and again, maybe I haven't talked to Dave or anyone. But is it an option or possibility? Again, it would require communicating with whoever you're dealing with.
Yep. Yep.
We're talking, now I'm talking 2018 here, right? That's what we're talking.
Yep,
We're
that's
not
all we're talking.
Anything beyond 2018. We gotta get, and again, Dave's probably saying, oh, don't put me back in there. I don't know if he is
Well,
or
where
not.
we're at right now with options, please put me back in.
Well, okay,
So,
well then,
just 'cause
yeah,
that's more than anything, it's a locker room that's big enough to hold everybody.
yeah.
And so it's tough for us to answer that because I don't, the hope is we don't own the thing.
No, I understand.
So if we do own the thing, then.
Okay, let's say you get a new buyer,
Yeah.
can we rent it from them?
Oh,
Can we rent it from whoever for August?
Season.
What would it be? August, September, till November? I mean, just as an option. And again, I don't wanna tell you how that, I don't wanna break that, or disrupt your whatever, kind of.
yeah, and I think that, I think I can ask. That's all I can do on that one is ask.
If you have tenants in other parts of that area, so that's a possibility, somebody might else be doing the same thing, extending possibly, and again, that's between them and the new owner, I'm sure,
Yeah.
but,
Are there any other potential options? Anybody's thought of?
Is there any way to split this? I mean, we
Well,
need.
It's a question that
we've
I
had that
have.
whole conversation, but I'm just throwing it out there to say, can we take half of it and you guys take half of it for a year?
And what we've talked about, I mean, what would be usable here, the parking lot idea was but I don't like the parking lot idea.
How about the west side of the school?
But one of the two junior high teams couldn't use that field out in front of the school, one junior high team could.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, the outfields of the softball fields are grass fields. And really, those are the two options here.
Do we have locker room space for 7th and 8th?
Yeah, what's your locker room capacity down here?
Unfortunately, probably about the same size or smaller than what you guys have. Not yet. And again, I mean, we have spaces we could potentially use.
We have a spot where we could put something together for a year in the weight room. Locker.
And probably, obviously, we'd like to use that a little bit, but again, we'll make work whatever.
Is that a
whatever-
possibility, Dave, of splitting, like your junior high? You want your junior varsity and your varsity together?
Yeah.
That's
That we are together.
And even
As
though
far
it
as where our
wouldn't be
junior high-
ideal, but for a year, just
It-
take,
Yeah, and I've already said as a head coach, it doesn't matter to me if the junior high is right next to me or
Okay.
where they are.
so that opens the doors to some possibilities.
Is there any possibility of me mowing that thing or getting it level? Was that much askew?
Well,
Probably was.
the better of the two fields,
Was it small?
the small one,
Yeah.
and even in walking that one with Paul, that one, we probably wouldn't want 7th and 8th grade both on that field. Again, it's small enough where, and it looks bigger from the road. As soon as I walked out there, it's like, oh, and Paul was telling me, Dave, you're not gonna like this, cause it's not as big as what it looks like. But that's the more level of the two. Could we make it work with 7th and 8th grade together on that field? We could make it work. It wouldn't, it's not quite enough space, but again, to have JV varsity on that would be way too small. We wouldn't be able to do kickoffs, punts, things like that. And then, yeah, and then the bigger area, that really slopes way more than what it looks from the road.
Yeah, that was too bad, cause I cut that for quite a while.
Yeah. Oh,
Like I
yeah,
said,
it looked good.
Why did I do that?
Yeah, it looked really good.
What about scheduling? Can we do, I mean, is there an every other day, something option where you would be able to limit your needs because you've got some sort of staggered schedule? Just throwing out ideas so you can.
Yeah, we practice at like 5 o'clock in the morning before, and I mean, with our varsity, I believe in giving days off, and we don't go every other day days off, but there's a couple different weeks in the season that I tell the kids, go to a movie or something, you know.
But you still need that consistency during the week for both, or both, yeah.
So Bob, you got a couple things to look at. I don't know, we could call one of our meetings and talk about it and make sure you're there. And what could we do here? I mean, well, we really don't. We haven't expended a lot of time on it, but when you think about it, there's not. The biggest issue would be the locker room, right? I mean, we could probably find some
That's the biggest
field.
issue. I mean, eventually there'll be field space wherever, but the lack of locker rooms at both schools is probably the.
Now, you don't, every kid that wants to go out makes the team.
Yeah.
And you've never had to cut. You never wanted to cut. I mean, let's say you get a locker room that has 75 lockers. And that's the most we could do for you. What would you, I mean.
I would keep all the kids and we'd find a way to make it work.
Okay.
Even if it's by 25 totes.
I'd have kids wearing their equipment to class.
Okay.
And then Billy Gray can deal with the teacher performance.
All seriousness, I'm not jabbing here, is we are looking at having some sort of facility out by, the track where we would have locker rooms there.
Oh.
Because, nothing against football players stink, okay? And so we would just as soon have the stink out there than in our thing. And so, I mean, we're toying with that, but of course, there's a pretty great expense to it, and that's the thing that we're just running into, is like, all right, well, this is ours, there's a big bill there, we don't, just like you, we don't have the money, we just have to physically do the tough thing, which is go up to our citizens and say, well, this is what we would like to do. And actually, that one's a long shot, but in a way, it's a needed thing, because if you're out there at an event, a baseball thing, or whatever, and you need shelter, that would be a good spot. But then also the lockers. We know we have a locker room. For this particular issue, we have a locker room issue. So for FIAD and stuff, we're fine. But so
Where do we go from here?
yeah, I know.
You're talking this year. I
Just
appreciate
this-
what you're saying, Bob. I
just-
know your wheels are turning for going forward, and that's gonna be a discussion at another time.
I mean, with what's available field space wise, if the old school's not an option, probably the next best option is to try and put one team in one school and another team in another school. Cause they're just, with the softball field, with the east softball field and the field out here, we still don't have room for both junior highs and JV and varsity, just field space wise.
Then we could never provide the locker room space. If you brought the whole works down. You couldn't, we'd never have the locker room space, right?
Not
No.
unless-
Well, we're gonna
It's
have
not-
the same issue next year too, though, I mean, there's no way.
Yeah, and that's
to
the
say-
long term is lack of, at either school, there's no plan for a big
Well-
area.
You know, you've got your campus to look at. We have our campus to look at. And within the facility, frankly, I think we could probably handle part of it. Not the big part, not the varsity and junior varsity. That's your bigger number, right?
Generally.
7th and 8th grade is not as, what are we
Well, I
talking,
mean, we
Dave?
get, you know, it's.
50,
it's-
40, 30?
Well, it's, you know, it depends on the year, but, 9 through 12, anywhere from 50 to 65 kids in 7th and 8th grade. And there's years where we've had 50 7th and 8th graders, but, you know, 40 is a more,
So about 40 to 50 ballpark?
people,
Well, I would recommend that you, Steve, your committee, and we have a committee, that we get together and determine what we could legitimately do, involving Dave in each of the meetings, and whoever he so chooses to have with him there. And see what was feasible, what we can come up with.
See, we both can just come back to
I-
another meeting with a couple of options.
It doesn't appear to me, and maybe I'm totally wrong, it doesn't appear to me that either of us is gonna be able to put together a 7 through 12 scenario this year. Bob, you're shaking your head like maybe.
you know, and
You.
and more than, I mean, what we need is just changing areas. You know, as far as putting every pair of shoulder pads and helmet in a locker, there's gonna need to be somewhere where we can put those helmets and shoulder pads and lock them up, because obviously we don't let them just sit on the floor and fight kids are coming and going or whatever. So there needs to be a changing area and somewhere where we can, lock up. Okay, everybody gotta throw your shoulder pads and helmets in this room so we can lock it up, type of thing, not actual, it's nice to have physical lockers, but we don't need.
Do you need more, you need toilets and.
Yeah.
And showers.
Well, and that, well, and
Send them to
not so
parents.
many of the kids shower anymore.
No wonder it stinks.
That's across all sports, not just football, it's the kids, they don't shower in Fayette, they don't, not so many kids shower anymore. And as far as toilets, Jimmy John's, 5 of them out there.
Not a cornfield.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would recommend that we do this quickly. To me, everything else we've done on this agenda tonight, and all of it has its deal, but nothing is more important than having a home for this year,
I agree.
so we can get started. When the snow melts, we've made a decision here now. The way the winter's going, it's probably gonna be later than sooner, but even so. And so, I can tell you that I will be talking to Bill about setting up a meeting for our liaison very soon. And I would hope you would do the same. And again, I think it's important to have Dave there. And in the process, ask people what's available. I mean, I don't know what's available around here for property. And if we went downstairs and measured our old it used to be our locker room years ago, and measure it and say, what could we put down there for lockers? I don't have a clue. I don't even know what size lockers you need. Or do you need lockers or just totes? That's the type of, well, what is the size of it? And what could we practically do? What could you guys do in that interim time period? And boy, it sure be nice if the new owners of the old school would be willing to rent us the space for 2018, so we can start working for beyond 18. Because there needs to be a home here for the football team. Okay. And we do have to go through this exercise every year. Anything further on this? Anybody? Well, so we've done 8, discussed our next meeting. We'll make a commitment to get that done as soon as possible, but at least in March, so we can get back. Bob and Bill and Steve and I will get together on some of these other issues to come up and address those, so we have when we have our next liaison meeting, which will be up in Moose Lake. By the way, I just wanted to point out that there's some water over here and
I
some
was
juice.
mentioning that.
I was just saying, Bob, nothing, I'm not implying nothing, Bob, when we come up there for the next meeting.
I heard make it comfortable.
Yeah, and if you're cooking at the church, anything left over would be nice, bring your
There
own.
usually isn't.
So just to revisit, so we're gonna work through definition of that administrative host,
Yes,
and that definition of equipment.
yes,
And then you guys are gonna talk about track equipment and kind of come up with, just visit that, think about
Yeah.
it, so we can talk. And then,
and each have you've got our definition in
Right.
the document for your definition and see what we can put together.
and knowing that we need to order track equipment sooner rather than later, visit it, talk about it, kind of visit the board
Yeah,
about
do what
it.
you gotta do,
And,
it's February 21st.
What we need to do, Bob, is order it and bill, no. And then we're gonna,
The quote, though, I'll give an updated quote.
So you just get the bill.
then we'll all kind of come up with, brainstorm this football.
Yeah.
Football,
Yes.
and brainstorm.
Anything else? Very good session, thank you, folks.
Thank you
We'll
for
get
being
there,
the host.
we'll get there, absolutely. Meeting's adjourned.